Here's Alice O'Loughlin deep in the pocket. This would be nice. Bends it across. That is nice.
Needs to get rid of Lynch. Lynch got there in a tackle. Here's Perkins, and Perkins gives it off to her teammate.
It's going to be a foot race and a one-on-one. Houghton and Livingston. Houghton, she's kicked 3 behinds today. Can she kick a goal? What a finish.
Gemma Houghton, what a highlights reel she is. Some big headlines from the round of footy. Welcome to the W Show. Thanks, of course, to NAB. My name is Nat Edwards, and with me today is Melbourne Star defender Libby Birch. Libby, welcome to you.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. I will get to your game in just a moment.
Do we have to?
Unfortunately, we do, but you can look away. Sarah Black, award-winning journalist, welcome to you.
Thanks for having me, Nat.
The Suns, how good were they?
Yeah, the Suns were great. I think they really just carried on that belief of their first win, even with the week off.
All right. We'll just rip. It's a Band-Aid. We're just going to rip it off real quick for you, Libby. It wasn't the result that you wanted. It was a game that we were all highly anticipating across the footy industry. Adelaide up against Melbourne, and the Crows were just so dominant from start to finish. What was it like being on the receiving end of that?
Yeah, they were prolific from the first bounce to the end of the match. They just absolutely nailed what they came out to do, and that was to be physical, get their tackles in, and play that surge football that they've been doing so well for 5 seasons.
Do you think the ground helps them as well? Because noticeably different, it's a skinnier ground. Does that play into it as well, Norwood Oval?
Absolutely. That's their fortress. And just like Casey Fields is ours, but Norwood, with those skinny dimensions, they're able to really press the ground, and it really suits their game style because their intercept defenders, like Sarah Allen, can set up their back line, and it's basically impossible to get it out of their forward half.
Sarah, I'll get your thoughts in just a moment, but we need to talk about Erin Phillips because she was in sublime form across the weekend. 3 goals, and unfortunately, and this is where you can probably close your eyes and look away, you had to play on her. What is it like playing against Erin Phillips, and what makes her so good?
Erin's just the star of our game, and there's no doubt about that. She's been a consistent performer across 5 seasons, and to play up against Erin Phillips, it's always a privilege because you know you're playing against one of the best players or the best forwards or midfielders we'll ever see in this competition. But her strength, her brutality, as you can see there, just tackling, pressure, but she just knows where the fall of the ball is going to be, and she can create goals out of absolutely the smallest of opportunities.
Which just makes it so hard to defend on her, it doesn't it? I feel for you. I mean, Sarah, where do you see this now with Melbourne and how they're tracking? I mean, we're not writing them off by any stretch.
No, not at all. And I think, like any side, the D's will take a fair bit of learnings, I'm not a fan of that word, they'll take a fair bit of experience out of that game and go, all right, this is what we need to work on. I think, from an outsider's perspective, coming off the preliminary final loss to Adelaide, I think we were hoping for a bit more from Melbourne, to see what they'd learnt from that experience. But really with the midfield core that they have and, the firepower up forward, this is definitely not the end for the D's.
Well, another side that has lost to the Crows and quite badly but has impressed across 2022 is the Kangaroos, and they had a pretty easy win in the end over Carlton. Just the way that they were able to move the ball, Libby, was so impressive.
Yeah, I think they've got one of the highest kicking efficiencies in the competition. When they hit a target, they hit a target. And you can see here they're able to cut through the ground so easily, and it makes it so hard to defend. But that's something that I think they've been trying to find consistency in, their form. And I feel like over the last 2 weeks with the Giants particularly, and now Carlton, they've been able to start to find their form and what they want to play like again.
And I think what was more of a worry there was, how good North was. Let's put that to one side. But the way that they were able to cut Carlton open, it's quite a concern. We know the Blues have had a really tough draw. They've got Adelaide next week, which is, just going to make things even more difficult. But I'm really concerned about this forward line. They've had quite a bit of tall timber come out of it with Taylor Harris obviously moving on, Ali our Downie as well, and Jess Good was unavailable once again. But, the fact they didn't bring Imogen Milford in meant that they had a really short forward line, and it cost them in this game.
And you mentioned that game against Adelaide. That is their annual Carlton Respects game. So the players will all be wearing orange socks for the round, there to be highlighting gender equality and the prevention of violence against women, which is a really great cause, and you can head to carltonfc.com.au for more on that. The Dockers. We talked last week on this show that it was the test that we were all waiting for against the Pies, and they certainly showed us that they are the real deal by beating a contender. Their pressure, Libby, was just relentless, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've been able to see from some of the top sides in the competition that if you can nail your tackles, but get a tackle and actually get a holding the ball or a turnover. That's the difference between these top sides. And that's the same as what Adelaide did on the weekend. But they had 78 tackles and 23 of them were inside 50, which means they're able to keep the ball in their forward half, which means, they're able to get scoring opportunities.
And to your point, Libby, almost a quarter of those tackles resulted in a holding the ball free kick, which I think was the real difference. And so many of them were in their forward half of the ground. Watching Carving that game, doing the match report, that, the ball barely got past the halfway point and into Collingwood's attacking half. It was really quite a dominant display from the Dockers.
Well, Freo coach Trent Cooper, of course, was singing the praises of his two-star midfielders in Kiara Bowers and, of course, Hayley Miller, who has just been sublime. He's now saying they've got 2 A-graders in their midfield, which made me think, who are the best midfield duos going around in the comp? Now, these are just some of the duos going around. These are the sort of the top echelon of the ladder, these teams at the moment. But Libby, if you could have any pick, and maybe you can't pick the D's duo, who are you picking?
If I can't pick a Melbourne duo, it would definitely have to be Eb and Anne Hatchard. They have been just such a symphony over the last couple of seasons, and their ability to know where each other is. Eb's kind of a in and under player, and Anne Hatchard reads the play so well and gets on the outside and gets a lot of those uncontested possessions. But they're just absolute beasts around the footy, and it's so exciting to watch. And no, in any game, they're competitive.
Yeah, they really complement each other really well, as you said. For mine, I love those two. But, I'm siding with Trent Cooper here. I think Kiara Bowers and Hayley Miller are just forming a perfect combination as it stands. I love the impact that Miller has when she goes forward. I think that's really setting her apart. But, there's some really dynamic duos up on that board. I know we had a bit of trouble pinning down who North Melbourne's 2 midfielders were. They're so deep. But I reckon Ash Riddell is probably the informed player of the competition as a solo.
Oh, most definitely. I thought she was on world record pace yesterday when she had 20 touches in the half and then sort of died off just a little bit, but still a very, very good game from her indeed. You mentioned 23 tackles from Fremantle that were inside their forward 50. That seems to be a bit of a trend at the moment in the AFLW, that the team that applies the most pressure in their attacking 50 and had the most tackles actually won this weekend, except for the Giants. They were the exception. Sarah, what do you put this down to?
Some of it has to be rustiness, just the fact that the Dogs hadn't played for a few weeks there, and they were really, struggling to connect inside 50. No Izzy Huntington, of course, too, so it's a different forward line that they're playing with. I think things will tidy up a little bit for the Dogs as it goes along, but the Giants were just incredibly efficient when they did go into attack.
I mentioned the Giants there, obviously that team that had didn't have those tackles but still managed to win the game. We have to speak about Nicola Barr because during the week the coach had really put the pressure on her, saying basically singling her out in a press conference after last week's loss to North Melbourne. She rebounded in the best possible way with 3 goals, the first 3 in her career, Libby, and it could have gone 2 ways when a coach calls you out publicly, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would have been a pretty blunt feedback, and particularly not just privately, but publicly as well. That's a really hard pill to swallow, but good on Nicole Barr. That shows a lot of character and a lot of, a lot of strength and resilience to just absorb that and go out there and play footy and do what she does well. And credit to her, 3 goals, and has helped the Giants get a win.
And a beautiful set shot. How would you go if Mick Stanier just decided to throw you up forward?
I'd love it. I'm always at training, I'm always asking him to go up forward, but I can never get the opportunity. So maybe Sarah Blackwell might get one soon, but who knows?
Is that what, do you want me to put this out there?
I think we need to start a campaign.
Libby for key forward?
No, I'll let our forwards do the talking. But no, it was terrific to see. Yeah, 2 backliners come back. Really, Nicole Barr and Louise Stevenson kicking goals for the Giants.
Yeah, amazing. All right, we're starting a campaign. Libby Birch to go forward. Daisy, you can go back. Just on the Giants, we do need to talk about Haneen Zarika, who sat out the Pride game over the weekend for the Giants. This was her statement. She broke her silence on Instagram during the week, saying it was a difficult decision, but she had a responsibility to represent her faith and community. She also said she respected all people regardless of their sexual orientation, and her coach Alan McConnell spoke about it as well. Post-game, this is what Al had to say.
Difficult, yes, but perhaps even more interesting is complex. You know, it's just not simple. And as I said to Haneen, it's we can have similar opinions, different opinions, but they'll never break the bond that we have for one another and that she has with our team and her teammates. And I'm very comfortable and confident that that's all intact.
It's a really complicated situation, and I'm so glad that Alan McConnell came out after the game and actually addressed the situation and the issue. I wish that the Giants had done that a few days before, because I felt like they may have sort of left Haneen out to dry a little bit, but I'm glad that someone from the club came out and said what he said. A complex situation. If you're a teammate of Haneen, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think that it's a very hard one, Nat. It's you know, when your teammate's like your sister and you're a family. It's your second family. The club's your second family. And I think that it's all about understanding that person and what goes behind that person. I think that AFLW is so good at that, in that we respecting everyone's decisions. And
it's a tight-knit community
it's a really tight community. And I think that the teammates around her would have had that open discussion and it would have been understood, knowing that, you know, it is such a complex situation, but we're really feeling for, you know, what was a difficult start to the week for Haneen.
And it's difficult for us to sit on the outside too and try and comment and you know, to put ourselves in Haneen's shoes. We don't live the experience that she does. She doesn't live the experience we do. As you said, they're a really tight-knit community, the Giants. You know, having spent a bit of time up there a few years ago in with the club, Haneen's an incredibly well-loved person and member of that Giants family. You know, I'm sure there'll be some players privately who'd be a little bit disappointed with the result of it, but I don't think it's going to be doing any lasting damage to that Giants fabric.
She's also 22, so young. You know, and in life experience terms, you know, she's still got a lot to learn and to grow as a person too. So, you know, I don't think we can hold anything against her at this point. Let's move on though to the Gold Coast Suns, because wow, just wow. Back-to-back wins for the first time in their short history. It was a really gutsy come from behind win, Sarah. Did you see it coming?
I really did. I don't know whether some of it was my Richmond fatalism, or you know, or maybe the fact that I covered the Suns a few weeks ago when they last played. But the fact that they were able to win that game like they did against the Eagles, I think, you know, when they're in that situation again against Richmond, and an easier situation, they weren't down by as nearly as much. It meant that they were really able to capitalise. Sarah Perkins and Tara Bahana are building a really tight-knit bond down there. They're really working well together, and I think the Tigers need to do a bit of searching as to what they're going to do without Harriet Cordner, because Sarah Darcy, as hard as she tried, she's just not tall enough down there.
Do you think the depth of the list for the Tigers could be a bit of a concern as well?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an issue going forward, especially with Courtney Wakefield still out of the side for a little bit longer. It means they're also stretched up forward. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a headache for Ryan Ferguson, not an easy solution.
All right, time now for a bit of a deep dive, and we want to take a look at the Brisbane-Geelong game, Libby, because the Lions, they managed to hold on. We all thought Geelong might just get there. I think a lot of people were willing the Cats over the line, but how did the Lions actually manage to hold on?
Yeah, well, we'll see some footage in a moment, but over the last couple of seasons, the strategy behind getting a win has got even more complex. And we've been practicing that strategy at trainings.
Yep.
So something that Brisbane implemented here was they dropped someone behind the ball. Now, this could be a winger, a forward, anyone that they choose. In this instance, it was Warlord that came back. And it just gives that protection behind the ball and that spare number to come up and intercept or create depth for the side. So that was a really smart move there by the leadership group and the coach to make sure that they really locked that game down in those last couple of minutes.
I love that you say that, are training for those scenarios. And Sarah, have you seen that change at training as well? Like going out there, it's less skills based and skills focused, that it's now becoming much, much more?
100%, but it also depends on which club you look at, depending on where they are in their timeline of development.
Yeah.
So, what some of the, we still call them expansion clubs, they came in 2020, they're still focusing a little bit more on the sort of the skills side of it, but then someone like Brisbane, who have had such a strong core over the years, and Melbourne, I presume, are exactly the same, that they're able to go, all right, we've got this down pat, how are we going to evolve our game? And it's something that I think will be an interesting thing to watch going forward, especially with new sides coming in, how that game continues to evolve.
Well, a couple of AFL stars were keeping a close eye on that Geelong-Brisbane clash. As you can imagine, Patrick Dangerfield is a big AFLW fan. He was very, very nervous during that game, and Charlie Cameron, of course, the Lions superstar forward, just jumping in there. Go Lions. Now, this was great. West Coast, they're all in ISO, locked down. It's been a really tough time, but Sam Kerr, the Matildas superstar, just dialing in on Zoom as you do for a little bit of a pep talk, which I really, really love. Now, this one, Greta Bodie. Is this just a case of she doesn't know how to use Twitter, Sarah, or shameless self-promotion?
I think this is an accidental tweet, but instead of deleting it, she's doubled down, which, it's all power to her, but it does invite a bit of ridicule from your teammates and your coach. Craig Starcevich, very active on Twitter, and I love it.
Now, a little bit of hotel karaoke coming from Fremantle. I'm just going to throw to it because I don't think I can really explain it in any other terms. So let's take a look.
Are you ready to be free from desire? My love has got no power, he's got his strong beliefs. My love has got no fame, he's got his strong beliefs. Free from desire, my senses purified. Free from
Now, I'm pretty sure, I don't know what is going on there. They've got a lot of spare time in this little hub situation that Fremantle have been in. Yeah. Laura Pugh, I'm pretty sure, can play 2 recorders out of her nose.
As you do.
As you do.
As you do. I don't know. Did you guys have to learn recorder in primary school?
Yeah.
Was that? Yeah.
It was torture.
Yeah.
It was.
The talent of our AFLW players is just extreme, isn't it?
Do you have any talented Ds that can do anything like that?
Oh, no. Look, I think we've all got our hidden talents, but no, Eliza McNamara is pretty good at dancing, so...
All right, well, we might have to get some of that on the buzz for next week. We do need to talk, of course, about the NAB AFLW Rising Star nominee from last week, which was Zimmy Farquhar, and oh my goodness. What a debut from Zimmy. She look at her. She's just so graceful. What impressed you most, Sarah?
I think it was just the composure and the ability to perform in her first game of footy. She's had to wait a year. She was a top draftee, had to wait a year. So she's still quite young. So to have that composure with a fair bit of high expectations coming into the game. She was replacing Dakota Davidson at the time, so pretty big shoes to fill. But she just didn't look flustered at all. And, as you can see, this conversion is quite incredible.
Yeah, I just love the celebration. Just,
yes.
Arms out. And the long sleeve in your debut as well. I mean, some players just like the long sleeve look. I don't know.
Did you see Georgie Press-Parkis without long sleeves against
the Blues? It looks weird.
Yeah. Against the Lions,
yeah, it looked weird. Like, I don't know what's going on there. Have you ever worn long sleeves?
No, I haven't, but it would be very handy.
Do they even make them in the Melbourne Guernsey?
Yeah, well, it would be very handy in the winter months, that's for sure, but probably not
Probably
in the
not summer. No.
Maybe she's been sun smart, which is also a very good thing. That is it for the W Show, of course. Thanks to NAB for this week. Libby Birch, thank you so much for coming in. It was great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And Sarah Black, as always, thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Nat.
For all of Sarah's absolutely fabulous work, you can head to women's.afl and, of course, the AFLW official app. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again next week.